But, generally, as I said, I think there's optimism. I think people are feeling better about the economy and where things are. And I think things settling down abroad. The dollar's a little stronger now. So I think there's general optimism. We are doing group purchasing. And again, it's mainly driven by, if I were an operator, what would I want from an investment partner? I would want them to bring something more than just a check. And how can they support me better? So, that's what really drove that. The desire to be the best partner that you can partner with in the investment space. I say there's this kind of flywheel where you invest in your people will stay longer. If they stay longer, they execute better against the guest because they're more experienced and you're internally promoting and et cetera. If they execute better against the guest is going to come more frequently, and then you can invest in your people and it creates kind of that flywheel.
Welcome to Farm to Fork, the Innovators. I'm David Maloney, president of Datum FS. With over 40 years in the food supply chain, we explore the stories and strategies transforming how we produce and serve food. Our guest innovator today is industry veteran Jim Balis, head of strategic operations at Capital Spring, a leading private equity and debt investment firm specializing in food service. Some of Jim's valuable insights in this episode include the current state of food service and the evolving consumer trends, proven strategies to drive value beyond just pricing, how the supply chain is evolving and what it means for businesses, and Jim's outlook for the industry as we dive into 2025. So buckle up, hit that subscribe button, and let's harvest progress together. This is Farm to Fork, the Innovators, where the future of the food supply chain starts with this episode. All right, Jim, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Dave. Really appreciate you having me on. I'm a lifelong restaurant operator, started in the business in my early teens in New York. I've pretty much held every position in the restaurant space, started a boutique advisory firm coming out of college after spending a stint in another industry, and joined Capital Spring about 11 years ago now. We are a restaurant investment firm, really based in Nashville. We have a couple of offices around the country. Other than that, we have roughly 3,000 restaurants in our portfolio across multiple segments and brands and industries within the space. We have franchisor businesses, franchisee businesses, lots of independent concepts. I had served as the CEO of one of our businesses for about 5 years called Sizzle and Platter, which was a large franchisee business. I just stepped down recently. That had 800 restaurants in 2 countries across 8 brands. And that's my story.
Yeah, cool. Sizzle and Platter, was that a buffet concept?
So Sizzler had a salad bar. It wasn't a buffet concept. It was a salad bar. And then it was kind of like a hybrid model where you would order at a counter and have the food delivered to your table, the center of the plate, like proteins and your entrees, but then you would go to the salad bar to get your salad. And that's the business was started as I think they were the original Sizzler franchisee, but, had since grown. Now, we're the largest Little Caesars franchisee, one of the largest Wingstop franchisees. We're in Jersey Mike's, Dunkin', Jamba, Cinnabon, Red Robin. So it's a pretty large franchisee business. And
Cool. All right. So why the food service business? Like, it sounds like, if I understood you correctly, you stepped out for a little bit and then you started your boutique advisory firm. So what'd you do? And was it because of what you were doing that chased you back, or you just missed the food service industry?
I mean, look, I've always loved it. I've worked in a number of different industries, and, in college, I had a small catering business that I started that was doing mostly work with the universities for their concerts and things that they had at their large venues. So I did kind of the backstage stuff for a lot of the celebrities that, would appear there. And so, just always kind of had it in my blood. Like I said, I worked through high school, although I was also a magician for little kids' birthday parties in high school. So I kind of had a couple of different jobs. The magician one was a lot more fun than being a dishwasher. But it wasn't as steady. And, just I've always loved the industry. I went out, worked in the movie industry for a little bit. That was very unpleasant. It's just a lot of waiting around and a lot of egos, and just didn't like it. So came back to
Hmm.
the restaurant space, and I've been here ever since.
Why would you say it's important to you? Besides, you like it. Why is it important, or what do you really like about it most about food service industry?
You know, what I find very appealing about it, and this may sound strange, but it's one of the few industries where we will take pretty much anyone, right? Doesn't matter if you're an MBA or you haven't even graduated high school. We have open arms
Hmm.
and we'll accept anyone. We will train you and we will pay to train you. If you're an hourly or a GM, right, you're going to go through training and, whatever the team member position, and we'll pay you to train. And, we create incredible career opportunities for people and all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. And, it's just accepting of everybody. And, that's one thing that I view very special about our industry. And, to think about, some people ask me like, what are you most proud of? And, obviously some of the EBITDA achievements are big, right?
Hmm.
Some of the businesses that I've been involved with, but, more so like the lives that we've impacted. I was with a group of our district managers at Sizzling Platter this summer. And, one of the guys, was finally able to buy a house, that had, 4 bedrooms, and he has 5 kids, and what he's providing for his family now. And he had been with us for, I think, 11 years. So, I mean, that stuff is so much more meaningful and fulfilling. And that's what I like about it.
Yeah, I can relate to that just in our restaurant and seeing people come through there, and it's really fun once you're able to start trusting and empowering some people, and they thrive, right?
Yeah.
They really thrive. Yeah, that's great.
Amazing.
Great, great, great insight. So, Capital Spring, do I understand correctly? Your title is Head of Strategic Operations. So maybe take a step back, excuse me, about Capital Springs. Like, how was it formed? All right. Why? And then what does it mean to be head of strategic operations? Like, what does your day to day look like?
Yeah. Capital Spring was founded about 25 years ago. We had two founders that felt like there was an opportunity to lend into the franchise space. And it wasn't specific to restaurants back then, it was any sort of franchising business. And it was started really as a lending platform. So we would lend for franchisees to grow their businesses. I came in, like I said, about 11 years ago. I think it's coming up here in the next couple of weeks, actually, my work anniversary. And when I came on board, I knew Capital Spring because they had actually hired my advisory firm a couple of times. I mean, we kind of had discussions, but the discussions were, maybe in addition to lending, we should do some equity investing. And, back then our funds were smaller. I think 75 million, then it went to 250 when I got involved. Our funds now are about $1 billion. So I came on board, we started doing equity investments in addition to lending. And, now, we're really an investment firm that does mostly equity and a little bit of lending. We do kind of invest up and down the capital structure. So we can do lending, we can do minority, and we can do majority type investing. So it's really the full gamut. Being head of strategic operations, I'm sort of, since we're so much of our business is focused on the restaurant space, I do a lot of work on the operation side. And, what makes us different and what I'm proud of at Capital Spring is our contribution and support to our portfolio partners. So a lot of investment firms and private equity companies can write checks and, they'll go to board meetings and, provide, insights there. But I always say, like, how can we be more than that? Right. And so one example is I've negotiated some rates on some very commonly used vendors across our portfolio, whether it's payroll, credit card processing, point of sale. So when you step into our family, you sort of get free EBITDA because, you get that lower negotiated rate that you might not otherwise get. We have a 6-unit business in California that's getting a rate for some of these things of a 2,000 unit business because I've negotiated across our portfolio. I'm working on a project right now that's probably close to home for you, where, I'm looking at garbage bags, gloves, like brown napkins, like all these things that we buy that I view as commodities that has no impact to the guests. They don't know who you're buying it from or
Sure.
doesn't make any difference to them, but negotiating directly with those vendors. And so it doesn't matter if you're with Cisco, if you're with US Foods, if you're with PFG, you would get the benefit of our capital spring rate. So it's whether it's procurement, some of the vendors that we all use, like I said, we like to really be good strategic partners and bring value there. And then also on like the real estate site selection side, we have a department now that has access to a lot of the site selection platforms that would otherwise probably be too expensive for some of these smaller companies. And so they can plug into that. I don't require anything I negotiate. So if I have a deal with X payroll company, I don't say, hey, you have to use that payroll company. It's like, here's the rate. If you want to take advantage of it, great. If you don't, that's fine too.
Mhm.
It's with ADP, it can include their full HRS platform, and it's a rate that you can never get except for because we have such scale. And so it's things like that make us different. And, that's what my day to day is about, that value and then strategic value. I'm constantly going and visiting with restaurant operators and touring and meeting with them and learning their businesses. So the best practices I can accumulate are probably, a factor of 10 above other types of groups because they don't have that exposure. And so a lot of times, we can be with our portfolio partners, say, hey, I saw a great thing over here. You guys should consider that. And, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's technology. Sometimes it's just a best practice operationally, leadership, strategy. We just offer a lot more because we are so invested in the space. We have so many different brands. We have
Yeah.
all across all different segments that, my job really day to day is interacting with a lot of our portfolio partners across how we can support them better.
You mentioned earlier Wingstop and Jersey Mike's.
Yep.
So two brands that are, well, Jersey Mike was just acquired, but Wingstop has been one of the darling brands, let's just say, over the last 5-6 years. Are you able to, what strikes me is because of your network of brands, you're likely getting best practices from different brands, which can benefit your other brands. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you utilize that without upsetting the apple cart?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky question to answer. What I would say is there are certain things that a brand like Wingstop and the success that they've had have been driven by their growth, right? So, one thing, when I first joined Sizzling Platter, Wingstop's target audience was males 18 to 35. And if and in fact, when I met with them, I was like, who's the target audience? And that was the answer I was provided back then, and to their credit, they said, let's expand that. And, what's interesting now is the brand has a huge and broad demographic appeal. And they've done a phenomenal job through national marketing as they've grown. And so, and the marketing, they do absolutely a fantastic job with marketing and technology. And so that's a practice that I would love to bring back to some of our smaller businesses. But, they don't have access to national advertising and some of the resources. There are other things, systems and, operational efficiencies that you can go to some of the large franchise brands and say, wow, they do a great job distilling this down and keeping it simple. There's a business out there that's a great example called Perfect Co. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a KDS platform, kitchen display system, back of the house, where it shows, what basically like a dupe in the old days. And it will say like, instead of having the verbiage, where it shows, here's the order. Somebody ordered burger, fries, drink. Somebody else ordered a hot dog, somebody else ordered a chicken sandwich, and you have to read it and it'll tell you which order to make it all in. So it's all ready at the same time. That's what the KDS does. This one is all pictures. And so like it'll show the burger make, and if there's no onions, there's a big red X through the onions. So it doesn't matter what language you speak, it's so much clearer, right? And so,
Yeah.
seeing, going and seeing that at a brand, I can then take that to a smaller company and say, hey, this would have a great application for you because it's done wonders, not just for simplicity of training, but the order accuracy has improved dramatically with the use of that technology. So there are things like that you
Yeah.
can bring, right? But then others sometimes are more complicated.
Yeah. And KDS kitchen display system.
That's what that stands for. Yeah, it's those screens back of the house that tell you, what orders are coming in, what order to make them, et cetera.
Yep. Yeah, because consistency, I know in our restaurant is tough.
Yeah.
Really tough. I mean, coffee, bakery, we do some sandwiches, salads, breakfast sandwiches, etc. But just a latte or right, it just consistency it's tough. It's very difficult. It's very
Yeah.
difficult. That's interesting. Cool. All right, so maybe we'll step into the industry a little bit more here and kind of about the health of the industry. What do you think the current health of the food service industry is? Not just your brands, but the industry as a whole as you see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are cautiously optimistic right now is probably the
Yeah.
best way to describe the feeling across leaders. I think we're all expecting some inflation here in 2025. Some of the discussion points have been in the 2 to 3% range, split evenly between labor and COGS, or COGS and labor as it runs down the P&L. So, I think that's something that we're expecting. I don't think a lot of the industry, leaders and companies want to take price to offset that because I think they're
Yeah.
nervous about pricing as it stands. It seems the pricing gap between restaurants and supermarkets has grown a little bit again, and may cause people to move away and make things at home. But so I don't think pricing is there necessarily, but maybe a little bit to offset it. A couple of percentage points, which is really mostly unnoticeable to the guests. It's pennies. But I think general optimism. I think you'll see value because you're seeing it right now, right? Like there's not a TV commercial out there that's not promoting value. What's interesting though that you're seeing is value is taking a couple of different shapes right now. It's not just the $5 price point. And I think Taco Bell kicked it off and maybe, to Chili's credit, them too, where they said, okay, Taco Bell said, we're going to have a $7 price point, which is above QSR's sort of like, $5 screaming barbell approach, and saying, we're going to offer a ton of food for $7.
Yeah.
And so they show this picture of all this stuff, right? And so I think value is taking a different shape. Chili's, launched and Applebee's copying them to some degree. One of our portfolio companies, I actually asked them to do the same campaign a year before Chili's, but they didn't do it. Putting that aside, where, they're saying, look, you can buy a QSR burger or you can go to Chili's for $9.99 and get a burger, fries, and drink, endless fries. Like, why would you go to McDonald's, or QSR, right? And so value is taking that form as well. Like there's value in what you get, not just the actual dollar. And I think that's going to be, a theme going forward into the coming years. And I think, you're going to continue to see automation play a bigger role as labor becomes more challenging. I think people are starting to take that side of the business a little bit more seriously. I mean, we're so under automated when you think about the fact that we have people making coffee as a great example when it's something that can be so easily automated. And so much of that is through a drive-through where people aren't looking for a barista experience, right? It's one thing if you're going in and looking for that or third wave, but if you want to just basically get your habitual caffeinated beverage and drive through and leave, it's about order accuracy and how that product is made at the end of the day. My wife's order is so complicated and it comes out different every time. I almost wish we could automate that.
Interesting. So, and to your point about Chili's, their latest earnings came out maybe yesterday from the recording, up 31% same store sales year on year, which is insane for casual. I mean, it's insane anyways, but I mean, it's for casual dining. That's crazy. And for those maybe saying, well, maybe they were down the year before. Nope, they're up 36% from 2 years ago.
Amazing.
So they were up last year too. So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And to your point about automation, labor's tough. It's tough. It's a lot more expensive than it was 4 or 5 years ago. How much of that automation, I mean, I know at our restaurant, we have online ordering, don't get me wrong, but we've resisted that some. We haven't been real vocal about it, let's just say, because in our case, we're kind of a community center, right? Like our place has been there for, we bought it 3 years ago. Our place has been there for 30 years. And, the mayor's in there once a week. It's a community center. I mean, it is, we really stress the people relationship, which is interesting because Starbucks is starting to move back there with their ads, right? With the writing people's names on the cups and messages back on the cups, that human connection. How do we balance that as an industry, that automation versus that human connection?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and I think there's definitely two different usage models, right? There's what you're talking about at your restaurant where somebody comes in and orders and wants to have that person experience, right? And then there's a person that orders through one of your digital platforms, right? They're looking for your product and they're not necessarily looking for an in-person experience, right? So, what Chipotle is doing, and to their credit, and some others are anybody that orders through the digital platform, it's being made by a robot, right? Because that person isn't looking to walk down the line and pick their food and interact with somebody. They want to get their product. They want it to be made correctly, portioned properly, consistent, accurate, those things. So, there's ways to apply automation to two different use cases. And then I think there's other areas, like I said, that Perfecto, where automation can help with order accuracy.
Yeah.
That improves the guest experience, right? And may, speed up the ticket times. There's others where, you're looking at those concepts, like I think Freddy's is a great example, that are making a lot of products to order in a fast food setting. And, they've migrated to a clamshell cooker. So whereas they used to make their burgers on a flat top, now they have a clamshell. So it's almost two flat tops on top of each other. So it cuts the cook time more than in half. And you get a perfectly cooked product because it's cooking it from both sides simultaneously. And so it's speeding up the process. So that's an automation where the guest actually has a better experience at the end of the day because they have a much more consistently cooked product faster. And I think there's the other side of automation you're talking about, which is I was abroad recently and, in Europe, the kiosks, ordering from kiosks are ubiquitous, right? Like they're all over the place. I walked into, one location where, the girl was behind the counter and I went up to talk to her and she pointed to the kiosk. It was like, don't talk to me, talk to the kiosk, right? Like, so there's that where I don't agree with the balancing, There's also a system out there, I forget the name of it, where, it's designed for more fast casual concepts where you walk in and they have screens in front of the registers. I don't know if you've seen this. And it's somebody from another part of the world that's on a permanent Zoom call. And, it's like, hey, I'm Jim. I'm here to take your order. And they have a POS system in front of them and they take your order. And so you have this kind of personal experience, but, I don't know what they're paying for that labor, but I'm guessing it's a lot cheaper and there's no workman's comp and no shows and all the other things.
Yeah.
And so that's like a hybrid automation, experience. So I think there's different use cases. There's different ways to apply it. But at the end of the day, you're right. You have to understand, do I ultimately want to be served by a robot that comes to my table and takes my order and brings my food?
Yeah.
Probably not. But if it comes and clears my plates faster than a human would, maybe I would, even in a full serve setting. So, there's different applications, I think, and ways to do it, but it's definitely a balancing act. And, having that kiosk and for somebody that wants a person experience is not the way to go.
Yeah, I think I was recently in a Texas Roadhouse with my son, and I think they do a nice job with that, where they have the server, but they also have, you can pay your bill right there. You can even order right there. So if you need something, you don't have that stress of where's your server, but you still have that personal touch. I really like that model, particularly the check paying, right? That I didn't have to wait for somebody to come with a toast system or an iPad or something for me to pay, but still got that personal touch.
Yeah.
What do you think the current health of the consumer is from your view? I mean, we've kind of come through a lot of inflation, right, for the consumer. It seems that the consumer was cautious. Perhaps the consumer may be a little bit more risk on now coming into 2025. What are you seeing from your view?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's somewhat split. I think you have the less affluent consumer, that's the consumer of QSR and some of the deals we were referring to in casual dining right now, that is feeling it more. I think a lot of maybe more affluent people that are saying, I don't understand. The economy is doing well. The stock market is up. Like, why are people complaining about the economy, right? The economy is strong, like unemployment's low. But I think when you look at the less affluent consumer, they are being pinched. They don't have big stock portfolios. They're going to the supermarket and they're going to restaurants and saying it's more expensive than it was. And am I being paid more, proportionately? If I'm paying 30% more at the supermarket, has my pay gone up 30%? And I think for some of those less affluent consumers, I think the inflationary impact has been greater than the affluent consumer. And I think, you see that in higher end dining that hasn't suffered the same traffic count issues as, some of the fast food and fast casual concepts have. And so I think, there's some trepidation with that less affluent consumer. And then I think above that, I think there's less of that trepidation and more of that optimism, somewhat free spending. And so I think you just have to look at it across the different consumer categories and answer that question differently. But, generally, as I said, I think there's optimism. I think people are feeling better about the economy and where things are. And I think, things settling down, abroad. The dollar's a little stronger now. So I think there's general optimism.
Yeah, and to your point, I happened to be at a business dinner last night, and at a high end restaurant, and it was packed.
Yeah.
I mean, it was absolutely packed. I mean, there was a wait for the dessert room at 10 o'clock at night on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy. And this is not New York City, folks. This was in Tampa. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
It is amazing.
Yeah, it was packed. So you mentioned the KDS system. How else is technology playing a part for your brands, or where do you see it out there in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think, another area, you talked a little bit about automation. I think another area where you're going to see technology play a bigger role, and it's probably not a surprise, is voice, specifically in the drive-through. So, brands have tried it. We've tried several as well. There's a brand out there called Open City, which does, a very strong job. But, I just think you're going to see it proliferate continually where, somebody that's going through a drive-through, again, is not looking for a lot of personal interaction. They're looking for a quick and accurate experience with the brand, right? And, if you have, look, we're all talking into our phones now, and with, voice AI, it's just become something that's, so almost conversational. So I think you're going to see it there. I think, slowly that will become adopted as that technology grows. And what that'll do, there's some technology that doesn't replace people. It helps, right? Like I talked about the clamshell cooker, right? And there's others like this that maybe you do need fewer hours from your staff because you have somebody else taking the order. And so now I just have somebody assembling, and, it's going to migrate to pay with your face, pay with the license plate. So really you pull up and your food's handed to you, or, maybe even it's put in a cubby and you pull up and wave your phone. So I think, we'll see some more of that. I think you're going to see technology around more customized experiences. Restaurant brands have typically had promotions that, they look at it and they say, okay, I'm going to do a spicy burger promotion, and that's it. And, you may be excluding a group of customers that don't like spicy foods. So I think you're going to see burger promotions come out that are going to be flexible so that they can appeal to the sweet consumer, the spicy consumer, the savory consumer, and you'll know who to appeal to based on some AI technology that's saying people that like this will like that. And I think you're going to start to see technology play a greater role there. And the phones are continue to play a greater role in payment, probably ordering and elsewhere. And I think a lot of the fast food businesses will migrate to the kiosk, mainly because, again, that in-person experience is less than it was. And I think on the full service side, it's going to go the opposite direction. I think the expectation on the full service side is I'm going for an experience.
Yeah.
You better deliver it, and better deliver it better than the place next door. Otherwise, I'm not coming back.
Yep. To your point, it was a 4.5-hour dinner last night.
There you go.
I got home way too late. Way too late.
It sounds like a good time though, Dave.
Oh, no. It was with my two buddies. One's a sommelier. One's a...
Oh, wow.
I was a designated driver, which was good. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I have to tell them now they're on the podcast.
That's great.
How has supply chain changed for your brands and how you've seen it? Now, you mentioned your, if I could call it, your kind of group purchasing a little bit, right, amongst your brands. But what drove that? And what else is changing, or what have you seen that's changed in the supply chain?
Well, I think we are doing group purchasing. And again, it's mainly driven by, if I were an operator, what would I want from an investment partner? I would want them to bring something more than just a check, and how can they support me better? So, that's what really drove that. The desire to be, the best partner that you can partner with in the investment space. So putting that aside, supply chain, I think, has changed. I think people are looking to source more products from the U.S. to mitigate some of the risks of whether it's, recent discussion around tariffs, or, if something is coming from a country that's threatened somehow. I think, you're starting to see a little bit more, I don't want to say xenophobia, but I definitely, people are looking to source more from the U.S., I think, as a risk mitigant to their supply chain. So at least have, diversity. So your products are coming from different sources, so you're not as reliant on a singular provider. And I think the expectation around consistency, just looking at our Jersey Mike's business, probably a lot of people don't know, but the expectation around the lettuce and the tomatoes being red, not green, like, it is unacceptable to have an inferior product on our line at Jersey Mike's. And, that's just not a brand standard, which it is, but it's, as a franchisee, that's what I want. And I want to deliver it to my guests and my customers, right? So I think there's a bit of a higher expectation around the quality that's being delivered. You might have gotten a case of tomatoes and thrown in the green ones. And I'm not just talking about Jersey Mike's, any business, but because it came in. And, now we're, with some of the technology and resources, it's okay, well, I want to credit for these tomatoes because I'm just not going to serve them to my guests. So I think, you're seeing a little bit of that. And, I think, generally people are trying to move away from daily deliveries. So you're seeing a little bit more storage in restaurants so that we can get 2 deliveries a week instead of 3 or 4, et cetera.
Yeah. And to your point about investing in quality, we've been at our restaurant, we made a decision about a year ago to start attacking value that way.
Yeah.
Right. But instead of lowering prices, raising the bar on our quality of products and the experience. And actually we've gotten very good at looking at the costs of our products, the true costs of our products, how they change, et cetera. And in some cases we have lowered prices to provide that value, but investing in quality as opposed to is our main strategy is providing value.
Yep.
Right. And when, now our coffee is organic, fair trade, single sourced from a farm, right? As opposed to before our supplier, they couldn't tell us where the beans were coming from. They could tell us what country they were coming from, but that wasn't enough for us. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So franchisees, how do you determine who's a good franchisee? Now you're a franchisee, right? But you also have franchisees. And you invest in franchisees. Like, what are the best practices? You were recently on Jonathan Mays' podcast. Jonathan talks a lot on his podcasts about there are brands out there that may not have the best franchisee strategy, even though they're growing fast, and then they get in trouble, right? What are those best practices in finding franchisees, or what do you look for in a franchisee?
I mean, you definitely want a franchisee that holds the brand standards in high regard. I think that is a very important aspect, that they're not thinking that they can run your business better than you can. Franchisees bring great value, and a lot of great ideas. I think the Big Mac and others have come from franchisees originally. So I
That's
think
right.
they bring great ideas to the table, but I think operational execution and supply chain, that they're not running to Costco and buying suboptimal products to replace at a lower price what could otherwise be provided by a broadliner. So I think those that adhere to brand standards and understand that I can bring value to my brands by suggesting things. One of the brands that we run at Sizzling Platter, I suggested an LTO that, hopefully is deployed here, in the coming future, that, could be a very strong promotion for the brand. But, at the same time, we were always looking for ways to be the best operator in the system. So, I think understanding that and the ethos, you want to make sure that the franchisee is not someone that is trying to save their way to prosperity through, minimal labor, that they're actually investing in their people, not just paying them the right wage, but rewarding them so that they keep them. I say there's this kind of flywheel where, you invest in your people will stay longer. If they stay longer, they execute better against the guest because they're more experienced and you're internally promoting and et cetera. If they execute better against the guest is going to come more frequently, and then you can invest in your people and it creates kind of that flywheel. So I think, you want to make sure that, the culture of the franchisees and how they look at their business is aligned with you. And then, you want to make sure they're well capitalized so they can grow. It's difficult now with where interest rates are, to build new restaurants and open new restaurants. So, you want to make sure that they're disciplined in their approach to growth, where it's not just building 1,000 stores that may or may not do well, but, picking good sites for the right reasons and, opening them, again, staffed properly and executed properly so that you set yourself up for success going forward. And as a franchisor, I think it's key to understand franchisee profitability, because if your franchisees aren't profitable, they're not going to open new stores. And so whatever you could do to help support that profitability will have, obviously pour gas on the fire to growth, because the more profitable we are, the better the returns are, the more stores we're going to grow.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a misaligned incentive there, right? Where the franchisor isn't being compensated based on profitability. And that can get some franchisees in trouble because the franchisor is not providing the support that they should.
Yeah.
And that's my experience, to be honest with you, amongst the hundreds and hundreds of brands I've worked with. Don't get me wrong, they're great franchisors out there, but there are some franchisors that could do better on behalf of their franchisees, for sure. Great point. So I said optimism. We'll kind of wind it down here. Optimism for 2025. Is there a boogeyman out there? Like, what worries you about 2025 for the industry?
I mean, certainly tariffs, some of the immigration policies. I think those businesses where the consumer is Hispanic, and that consumer may get scared with some of the recent policies. That's out there, TBD on the impact ultimately. It seems they're starting with a group that they're not going to the back of restaurants and removing people, but so I think the tariffs are certainly a concern, because we do import whether it's packaging and other products that are coming from overseas and could materially impact the cost. And the consumer is looking at it and they're saying, well, the hamburger price is the same. It may be, but that clamshell that we served it to you in to go, costs us 20% more. And, the consumer may not understand why you might have to take price to offset that back to sourcing products in the U.S. So, I think tariffs are a bit of a concern out there. If inflation exceeds what I talked about, and there's pressure on pricing, I think that's something that's out there as a potential to be met. But I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to continue on the trajectory. And interestingly, the 225, at least across our portfolio, has so far been very strong.
Good. Great. Well, Jim, I'd like to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate it.
And that brings us to the end of another insightful journey through the fields of innovation on Farm to Fork, the Innovators. It's an honor to have you listen. If you found today's episode as fascinating as we did, don't forget to share it with a friend, write a review, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. Farm to Fork is not just a podcast. It's a community of forward thinkers and change makers. Your thoughts and ideas matter to us. Reach out on social media or through our website, datumfs.com, and be a part of the ongoing conversation. As we wrap up today, remember, the future of the food supply chain is in our hands. Stay curious, stay innovative, and let's continue growing together. Until next time, this is David Maloney signing off from Farm to Fork, the Innovators. Thank you for being a part of this community. See you in the next episode.